content that Jacqueline and this amazing crew are going to bring here to Clubhouse. I'm so excited to have this quality of content, this topic on moral leadership brought to a global community here on Clubhouse. And so for those of you who have never joined the Clubhouse room, if you're new to Clubhouse, I see so many of you new in the audience with the party hats. Please do follow Jacqueline, Waqas, Hamdi here, as well as the Moral Leadership Club. So just click on the little green house and you'll get more of this great content. And so a few rules of the room to let you know what you're joining. This is a discussion that Jacqueline is leading with Waqas and Hamdi. I'll be joining in from time to time, as well as running the room to facilitate this important discussion. If you have a question, if you're a friend of Acumen Fund or Chobani or Adams or of the great humans that are up here and want to join in the conversation, type a line in your bio and raise your hand. That's how we'll know who wants to come up. And at the point that we start bringing others up to join in the discussion, Melissa and I will be looking at the hand raise queue and seeing the questions and the topics, and we will absolutely bring others up to join in this discussion. And with that, Jacqueline, I would love to pass it over to you to welcome everyone, to share what this is all about and why it matters, and then to welcome our special guest.
Thank you so much, Kat, and it is just so thrilling to be here and to launch our first Clubhouse conversation that we're calling Moral Leadership, New Leaders for the New Economy. And to be there with you, Kat, as well as with Waqas Ali and Hamdi Ulukaya, two of my favorite human beings on the planet, is beyond thrilling. So welcome all of you, and welcome everyone who came to listen and to be part of this conversation. And as Kat said, can't wait to hear questions. So we started this club because we believe that our institutions have run their course, and everyone's talking about the need for change, but we ask ourselves, who's actually doing it? Who's out there building the new business models for that new economy? What lessons can we share? And really, that's the purpose of this clubhouse, or this club, that to recognize that we're in a new era, and we need to find those individuals who are focused on building those business models that put our shared humanity and the sustainability of the earth at the center, and not just profit. So, as I said, I couldn't be more grateful not only to be guided and shepherded by Kat, but to be welcoming Hamdi Ulukaya, the founder of Chobani, known for giving 10% of his company to his employees, and Waqas Ali, co-founder of Adams, and I see Sidra, his wife and co-founder, and mother of a new gorgeous baby girl. Congratulations, guys. But they founded an amazing shoe company that also has done so much for the world. But before we start, I am a believer in ritual and in building new communities that transcend tribe, and that's also part of moral leadership. And so one way I recognized a fellow traveler when I first met Hamdi was the discovery that we both adored Sufi poetry, as does Waqas. So today, let me just share a poem by the great Persian poet and thinker Hafiz. Out of a great need, we are all holding hands and climbing. Not loving is a letting go. Listen, the terrain around here is far too dangerous for that. So Hamdi, I'm going to jump right in. Both you and Waqas grew up in villages, you in Turkey, he in Pakistan. And today you're one of the most successful businessmen in the world. You've been honored all around the world. You're a signer of the Giving Pledge. And yet you truly model what it looks like to lead with love. And I'm wondering if you would just start, when you think about moral leadership, where did your values come from? And how did you hold those values that I know, are so dear to you, while you held them in tension with this incredible drive to build a multi-billion-dollar, very unusual company?
Jacqueline, you're too kind. It's so good to be with you all. Waqas, I think I have a couple of pairs of your shoes. They are beyond, you've been an amazing leader with your wife. your shoes are the best. So I think I am a big fan of products. Of course, that comes with who's behind it, but it was a great surprise to me. I had no idea, Jacqueline, that the shoe was before Waqas. So that was amazing find. And Kat, nice to meet you. We are we are your students, Jacqueline, and you have inspired us all around the world, and you still inspire me every single day, and I'm very thankful for that. And the Hafiz poem is just the cream on top. This doesn't get any better than this. But to quickly jump into what you have asked, and I think it's similar to with a lot of people. We have this thought or the belief that in order to be successful in business, you had to follow a certain playbook. And that playbook was not that nice. And somehow we force ourselves to like it or go into the road that way. And it was disconnected from people like me or maybe Waqas who lived in the mountains, in the villages, or distance from the people of business or people of commerce. And growing up, I never thought, and I use the harsh word, I hated those people. And I never wanted to be one of them. I never wanted to be close to them. If anything, I was against that kind of model or system because of the destruction and damage and how it's seen from the working men and women or villagers or people left behind or people of distance. So someone who went to university had very radical beliefs that this system only works certain few and it never changes. It's always them for years and years and years, and the rest of the people live in a certain condition. So do you get angry about this? 100%. You do get angry about this. And some people get angry and do certain things. And I got in trouble with writing in newspaper with my anger, writing about human rights, Kurdish rights, ordinary people, that kind of stuff, a young university student. And I ended up finding myself in America because I had no other choice. So like other people who had to be forced to leave, I left as a student. But it was in upstate New York when I saw people of business were part of the community. And that was shocking to me. I was working in a farm, but at the same time I'm seeing people well off, and they were just ordinary people. So here I am. I had that belief when I saw that factory where I started Chobani, that walking into that factory, seeing a large corporation closing that factory and leaving the community behind, and there these ordinary people, well, about 55 of them, doing their best to close that factory the best condition they can, and yet no one from the corporation is there, no one here to say goodbye, no one here to say prayers, no one here to say I'm sorry, no one here to say anything. They just left after 70 years and 80 years. And I am an observer, I'm looking at it and say, where are these people are going to go now? What did they do wrong? How is this in their fault? And why are they so okay with this? And who made this decision? And maybe that was a, right decision. I don't know. But this happens all the time, everywhere around the globe. People make decisions, business decisions, that without seeing who gets affected by, and what does that mean to people, and how is that decision is made. And I know for a fact those decisions are made in a spreadsheet and saying, oh, we're going to have to get out of this business, we need to close this factory, if we do that, our EBITDA is going to go up this way, our profitability. People are in the offices are making these decisions.
So, Hamdi, what drove you in the beginning, though? Because you came to the United States without any money.
No, I had, no money, Jacqueline, you know that I'm no money, no business education, no network of anyone that I knew. I mean, it turns out that was one of the best thing ever happened. So when I jumped into this, all I had to go by is I don't want to be the person I grew up hating, one. Second, I don't want to be the guy who closed this factory. So everything else, if I can figure this one out, I'll figure it out. But the whole line is, how do I not become the person who I grew up hating? So I'll hold it there. But I think what I found out on my journey, Jacqueline, is from the village in eastern Turkey next to Euphrates River, or a small town in upstate New York next to Shenango River, the conditions are the same. Maybe the scale is different, but the conditions, this disconnect, is no different. Maybe scale is a little bit different, but it's the same thing. So wake up moment for me now is there a new way or different way to make this work in this field, which I can see on my 4 or 5 years of American experience that is a very powerful platform, this business is. But is there a different way to do this? And that is really a lonely journey. You don't get to talk to anyone. You don't get to talk about, all this your big ideas. You go into focusing on your minutes, or the days, or the weeks. I go back to the early days of Chobani, these 4 or 5 factory workers, a very old factory, no money, no experience, and very little, confidence among 4 people, and including myself, that this will ever see the light. And you come down to what you have mentioned in the beginning. You come down to that what matters the most. The human connection, the love, the passion, and a little bit of, anger, that for the right reason, and you get to work. Yep.
I know, I love it, Hamdi, and I never think about that framing of moral leadership as the antithesis of what you hate, and that's such a driver. It's actually why I left banking in the first place. Is I did not want to grow up to be like this particular boss, and knew if I stayed, I would. I love also, well, I adore you, and listening to you, and the genuineness that you bring, and also, I haven't been to your village, and you are like a brother to me. Waqas and Sidra are like my kids in some ways. I've watched them grow, and I did have the great joy of visiting Waqas's village. He was actually an acumen fellow, and had started the shoe company. I'm going to let Waqas talk about it, but I was so captivated by this young man who was, I always describe him as like a toothpick with 2 eyes that was just an exposed nerve ending. He never stopped moving, and I was like, I got to meet this guy. I got to meet his mom and dad, even more importantly. So I went to Okara, where Waqas and Sidra are from, and Waqas, when I see you at the beginning of your journey with a 3-year-old company, really a startup, and I think about Hamdi, what he's done in the last 15, 16 years. You're on your way. And would just love to hear how you think about this frame of moral leadership in this moment, and what drove the 2 of you in terms of who you are to become a business leader who is also really weaving the good into everything that you do.
I am, in a way, like, in many ways, I'm speechless. I'm just so honored to be here, Hamdi and Jacqueline and Melissa and Kate. Thank you so much. I think, like, early on as a kid, as a growing up in my village, I was drawn to some stories which I had no idea, like, where they came from. I remember reading a Urdu translation of a German story, which was about kindness in a small business. People who I loved, maybe because of their values, or I adopted their values because I loved them. Like Seth is in this room, he's an excellent example of that. Someone who is been writing passionately about business ideas and love, but with so much care that you are drawn to the person as much as you are drawn to his lesson, and then you find places like acumen through him. So that's what one example is, that's how it happened. I remember, like, my English was not good at all, like, until very recently, like, and I just felt that we never, like, would maybe we would never amount to something, or but we can only try our best. And now, like after going through what I have learned so far, and it's still evolving, I think to me success is not just what you achieve or get, but also like who you become. And as Hamdi said, that he did not want to become the person who he grew up hating. And so this is all, like I would say, it's the stories and the people, and then the values you learn from them, and then from the values you are drawn to more people, you want to help more people, and you are also like courageous to even ask for.
You talk about courage, and Hamdi talks about loneliness, and this idea of reimagining our businesses, reimagining our institutions. The words are so easy to say, but the price that we pay is intense. And I wonder if either of you could say a little bit about courage and loneliness. What's the price that you pay as someone who's really trying to lead in a new way?
Waqas, if you allow me, this moral leadership topic is so powerful, and you do the blueprints in your book, Jacqueline, so eloquently, so beautifully. But we see it when we see it, right? We know it when we see it. I mean, we see it in life. We see it in in stories. It's a smile-making topic when we see the selfless leadership, leadership that tries to move either the small community or greater community move forward in humanity, and we see the other ones too. And if you look at the history behind every single one of these good people, there is pain. There is pain, really. The question, it comes down to, what do you prepare to sacrifice for this strong belief? What are you prepared to lose? And we've seen people for that cause losing their lives, everything. Some of them, in the stories. In business, is really, what are you prepared to lose for your opinion, for your thought, for that strong leadership principles? It comes down to money. You're going to lose market share. You're going to lose, I don't know, maybe your business. You're going to lose this and that. And they come to you with those scary tactics. And if you don't follow these rules, these playbooks, you're not going to be as successful. People come and grab your market share. People, you're not going to have enough financials, then other institution will come and grab your percentage. I'm talking very plain language here, but that's what it is. And then you seek for advice. You seek for people to help you to think or put you in a right mindset. And now is better than ever before. This community, I was listening to Kat's conversation earlier. This community has grown. This consciousness is already in space thanks to all the people have contributed. But in the field of business, this was the advice are given also not to be this moral leadership place where it goes maybe slightly sounding better, but it's a selfish place that you go to. The biggest place that you'd get to and say, this moral leadership, this having these right principles in business, is no separate them from life, but if meaningfully implemented, it's really good for business. It's really, really good for business. But if it's meaningfully implemented. So then you go back to those lonely times, early days, where you have to build everything in minutes, in hours, in days, in weeks, where you have to be there physically, mentally, morally, where you have to put everything in risk, your time, your health, whatever. I'm drawing some dark picture, but it was something like for me. For me, I had 7 years, 8 years of blackout. Basically, I have no understanding of life for 8 years because I was inside that old factory trying to build things with my hand, not trying to sell yogurt or cups or run the plants, but trying to build it in a way that I have never been exposed to before, and the way that I would like it to I would like want it to be seen like. So they personally, you put everything in there, and then people come, makes offerings, and you have to put it through that standards and say, does it go into left or does it go into the right side?
Right.
And you are being tested so many times through your beliefs that with material things, things that you can buy it with, and things that you see on TV, you read on news. So I think the strength has to be, I'm not saying I'm that person, but I've seen it out there. It has to be this, I don't know, it's like a burning steel type of,
Yeah.
strength. You would say better than anyone.
No, but I've seen you all in terms of the prices that you've paid. And I'd be really interested, Waqas also, or Kat, in a very specific way. And thank you for that, Hamdi. I've just been awed by your courage and quite frankly, at this moment when America is so ambivalent about immigrants, who you represent and the possibility is incredible, all of you. So Kat or Waqas, in a very specific way, what price have you had to pay for stands that you've taken, and how do you balance it?
I'll share, unlike Waqas and Hamdi, who have had these powerful, painful, beautiful immigrant journeys that have led to starting now some of the world's most beloved brands as entrepreneurs and businesses that they created and own. Most of my background is running established companies, acquiring companies that others have begun and owned. I ran a $5 billion multi-brand food company called Focus Brands, and we had brands like Jamba Juice and Auntie Anne's and Cinnabon, and 75 countries around the world, 7,000 franchise locations, hundreds of thousands of points of retail distribution, consumer packaged goods for these brands. So a bit more mass market, but again, coming into a company and moving up as a leader in a company that I did not own or found. I mean, as I became an executive, I became an equity holder, of course, but I do love to broaden this discussion for all who are listening, who may be at different points in their ability to impact their environment, and to your point, Jacqueline, then feel that some of the trade-offs, the tax that we pay for taking a stand of a moral position, can be a bit daunting. And I remember several times over the course of growing these billion-dollar brands where the ultimate decision was money or people. And needing to influence people above me, the board of directors, the investors, key stakeholders, that it was the right business thing to do the moral thing, to choose our culture, our people, doing things with a better how over protecting profit in the short term. And I'll give an example. I made a huge mistake as we were growing the business. One of the biggest mistakes I've ever made as a leader. I was a first-time president of a global brand. We were launching new channels with new partners. And by definition, when you're launching an innovation, your company isn't built for it. And we did not communicate things effectively to our franchisees. And when a new product came to market in grocery, it was a violation of their trust. And outside of losing life and losing love, there's nothing worse than losing trust. And I immediately, after having earned so much trust with my franchisees and my business stakeholders, lost that trust in a second because I failed to deeply understand the nuances of a new channel as a new president. And I had to go to our board of directors and tell them that this new product that we launched in Costco, that was doing 70,000 units a week, that was going to result in millions and millions of EBITDA for the business. And everyone was very excited about, and we had put into the budget that because we didn't do it right, even though we had the legal right to do what we did, because we didn't do it correctly, communicate, protect trust, make our employees proud of how we were doing things, we needed to kill the deal. We needed to pull out of Costco, take the hit on the inventory, and start over. And I remember the board of directors saying, "Well, if you do that, the people are going to think when they whine and they complain, they get what they want. And we had the legal right to do this, so you just need to forge ahead." And my response was being willing to be fired. Here I am, the president, asking that we walk away from millions in contractually obligated sales and profits with a wonderful product with an amazing retail partner. And I said, if you expect me to lead this business going forward with our key stakeholders, they must trust me. And if they do not trust me, all the profits, sales, and endeavors that are coming in front of us will be a much heavier lift. I will not be able to do that. Just because we have the legal right doesn't mean it's right. I need to undo this so we can do it properly going forward. I had to remove 2 new hires that we had hired just for that business. It was going to affect people's bonuses, so I said, take it out of mine. I do not want it to affect the team when this is not their fault. And it is a high integrity owner and board of directors. And they said, because we understand you're doing this for the good of the long term of the business, we support you. I know many companies would have fired an executive for wanting to do the right thing. And I'm talking about a very simple, basic business decision that happens all the time when we screw up. But many don't feel the confidence to take a stand, to do what's right for their people, to choose people over profits. But the funny thing is, we made this decision. 6 months later, we had the opportunity to do something so much bigger. And when I went to my franchisees and my board and my employees and said, here's what we're going to do next, they looked at me and said, because of how you handled Costco, we trust you. And that opportunity single-handedly tripled the profits of the company the next year. So do the right thing, not just what you have the right to do the right thing. And it pays off for the people, the culture, and the business.
I love it. When you're building companies for the poor, which is what we do, it's the same. As soon as low-income communities feel that you're there to make money off of them, is the moment that you lose trust, is the moment that you aren't really able to build with and for. And Waqas, I want to bring you back in because you grew up in a place like that. And you had this ambition from very early on, and I see Seth Godin is sitting in the conversation too, and I hope we get a question from Seth because you started off with a very traditional cobbler, a shoe company, but you always thought, I think one of the first conversations that we had, you told me you were going to be the Zappos of Pakistan. Little did I know that then you would end up in the Y Combinator, build a shoe company, marry your co-founder, and start an incredible shoe business. But it was more than that because I'm thinking back to having a coffee with Chris and you and Sidra right before the pandemic, talking about the things we talk about in business, the stresses of building a company in a new way, with manufacturing in Korea, et cetera, et cetera. And the here you are now in a pandemic where still a very young company with not enormous sales, somehow you too made the decision that you were going to pivot, not only manufacture masks, but give them away. And how did you make that decision? And what did your investors tell you at the time? And where are you now?
I think this is a good point. This was originally not my decision. This was Sidra's decision. We had 2019 was we had just moved to New York City. This was first time Sidra and I managing a lot of what we thought were incredibly smart, and maybe they are smart and capable people, but we had hard time managing them. And I said, like 2020, we're all gonna just focus on shoes. We're gonna build this company as a sneaker brand that we want to build. And then pandemic happened, and we see that our team in Korea, they are wearing masks because Korea was quickly they're like quick to their respond to COVID. And we are living here in Brooklyn, and we started seeing people wearing one single-use mask. And I'm thinking, like, my neighbor here in Brooklyn, they probably can't afford these masks every day when they are like doing small jobs here and there. And while Sidra is talking about making these masks and selling them at cost, and initially the idea was we will just either make enough for New York City and just like give away in our neighborhoods. And we were also kind of like worried how the investors would think. But that's like when you also benefit from betting the right people. So one of our investors, Alexis Ohanian, he said, actually, I'll give you guys $15,000 to make the first mask and you can donate them. So we said, okay, that reduces our risk in terms of capital, and we made the mask. But other thing that happened was where the quality of mask was almost as important to us as anything else that we were doing, as also for the donation and also for what we are selling to customer. A lot of time, like we have seen companies doing, their main product is really good, but when they are giving away, when they are giving back to the community, it's not the same thing. It's not with the same pride and uplifting that you're offering to your top customer. So that was another decision that we were thinking, like making the same quality product. And we end up making more than 1 million masks and donating half of them, and then donating, selling 500,000 in the US. And now, like actually, our team is sending masks in some places in Pakistan because we have seen that there is shortage of masks in several communities that we are connected with. So I would say, like as you mentioned, Jacqueline, early on, the courage and loneliness. So there is a lot of like time where you are either because you are so alone, so it actually takes courage to do anything because you're so alone. You are like fear of being judged. Hey, you are the company that took advantage of the pandemic and made money. And as you all and we all know, when you do greater good for the community, you get the value back too. So I would say like it's consistently putting yourself on the risk, and then trusting in your partner. Like in that case, I trusted Sidra, she trusted her guts, and our investors, our board trusted, our team trusted us. Like we, from one warehouse in Brooklyn to we established one warehouse in Midwest, we established one warehouse in Korea. So moving very quickly uh, to like solve that problem. My feeling is that now, like the way I think is, in tech circle or in Silicon Valley, we have like started looking, we don't look down on risk taking anymore, but here in the business and especially on the moral leadership, like on the values part, I think we need to be more acceptance of when companies are taking risk which are on the base of values, and doing that enough and you get better on that. So I think like in a way the story is still the same. I remember like early on talking to Sidra. Actually, I used to think about this a lot. When Sidra first joined me, I was like, it's been 2 3 years. I was like, this person took a bet on working with me, and I'm ruining her life. And I hope I don't. I hope something good comes out of that. So I would say like now I have learned that it's good to take such risk on people, and it would work at the end maybe.
I love it, and I think you kind of took a risk on each other. Speaking personally, I I see Seth is now in the conversation, and would be great, Seth, if you have just a thought or a question, because you've also not only taken risks, but you've stood for doing the right thing, not the easy thing, and you've been part of Waqas's journey, and I know how much you think of what Hamdi does too. So, would love to hear from you.
Oh, well, thank you for having me. The first thing I have to say is I'm wearing my shoes right now. They're magnificent. Everyone who's listening should buy a pair. And Hamdi, I got to say, we're going through 2 containers of the new coffee a week in my house, and you gotta keep it coming because I'm going to get in trouble if I can't get more of it. With that said, I think there are 2 interesting ways to turn this slightly around, because one of the questions you asked is, um, does following the path of moral leadership also increase the profits? And we heard that great story from Cinnabon or whatever company it was. And the second one is, what price do you pay? And I think it might be interesting to flip it around and say, what benefits do you get from being a human? And secondly, It's fine if it doesn't maximize profits, because maximizing profits is something that Milton Friedman invented that isn't what we signed up for. And the purpose of life is life. The purpose of life is not to increase shareholder value. And what we all have is the opportunity to show up in our community or for our family or for the market to do work we're proud of. And so I view any of the things that I've been lucky enough to do as a privilege, not a price I paid, because that's why we're here.
Thanks, Seth. There's so much I want to say, and quick. If I could just ask quickly, Hamdi, to respond to Seth on the difference. Kat has led public companies, and when I see what you've done with Chobani, and I also have my refrigerator stocked full of Chobani, and between me and Chris, I think we have 8 pairs of Adams, every color. But you've launched Unstuck recently, that really is making serious this idea of inclusive supply chains. You've hired refugees. Tent has done extraordinary work around the world. Does it make you nervous to think about IPOing your company and taking it public? And how do you make decisions differently?
Well, that's one test that I haven't gone through yet. And I don't know if I could say more about that now. But I'm very confident that this idea is a powerful idea in the field of business. And 5 years ago, I would have been very, very nervous. Today, I am really, really, and I know you share the same.
I mean, you just made my day.
Yeah, I'm really, really optimistic where this is going when it comes to business being conscious, when the business being fair, and the stakeholder, I don't know if you call it stakeholder capitalism, where true responsibility of the business is to move humanity forward, make the world a better place for our children. I truly believe this is the work of many, especially in the recent 10, 15 years. I do not see any other way where these young, conscious consumers are going to use or buy product from the companies who does not have that, consciousness of the surroundings. So the world is a better place, I think, but there is still a lot of work to be done. What worries me most is, every time there is a hard work that happens, there is this trend that we see, then check the box type of attitudes. And I don't know how to describe that, but I'm a little worried about that. The reason for that is the most of the work is done in plants, in offices, in boardrooms, with a lot of sacrifices, a lot of spending times, I would say. And the one simple thing is, what does your employee think of you or the company, you as a leader or the company, when you go out there and preach that we are good for this, we are good for that, or whatever the topic is. So the work really starts with your own people and with your own community. I do feel that there is this quality problem if you try to save the world, but yet you don't know what happens with your own people, and that hasn't been clear with everyone in the company. So that's a number one rule. So when it comes to Chobani, what I speak a combination of 2,000 people. I get inspired by them. They teach me every day something. And if I go outside of that road that we have taken long time ago, they know how to bring me back to that, right place. So if that happens, then you feel very confident, you feel very strong, and you're ready to go to the next heights, next platforms, next dimensions. It's a lot easier. So it's not my decision. I look at people, how they feel. And the last thing I would say, Jacqueline, is every time I make a decision, I would make on this one too, I go back to people every time. And I ask them, we talk about it a lot, and we make a decision, and that decision that we follow. I'm sure that will happen the same way. But to come back to the early point that I made, the world is when it comes to this moral leadership, the responsibility of business, because of my journey in tent and newly on stock, I see there is a momentum. I don't know how you feel, but that's how I see that. I'm extremely excited about that.
I see huge momentum. In fact, with Unstuck, you guys are also, you're working with one of our companies, Azahar, which has a radical model of capitalism, which we can talk about if we have time. But it's, I love your answer, and I do think we need both private and public company leaders, not only using the language, but creating the systems. And Kat, I think you have a comment, and then Andrea, it would be great to hear from you.
Yeah, I would just add that I don't have any concerns thinking about Hamdi and Chobani and this beautiful brand and eventually house of brands, branded house, and branded house of leadership being brought to the public markets. In fact, it's exactly what's needed. What is much more difficult is a traditional company that is not built on this more modern, contemporary way to build. To Seth's point, not at the optimization of all profits at all costs, but simply building for a greater good of building, for moving an industry forward, for impacting people's lives positively. What is needed is for those companies to be a part of the public markets, to have companies that have that origin, have that true culture, to have the bright light of the public markets on them, to redefine what a well-run public company actually looks like. And that is far more likely to be done if the company is truly this way from the beginning and then simply has a different source of capital with public markets and can actually fuel that mission faster, farther, in a more visible way, in a way that's on their terms. I believe that companies like Chobani and Adams and their related impact initiatives growing only redefines the space to remind existing companies where the world is going and that they should move faster and farther in a more impact-driven direction. And it will inspire other companies that previously thought, well, we're moral leaders, we're conscious capitalists, so we need to stay small and we need to stay private, and and it's okay if that's what someone wants, but they shouldn't limit themselves because they believe the only way to be moral and a builder is to be small and private. And so I am rooting for the Chobanis of the world to redefine what great public companies look like, should that be a path that they're on.
And Kat, what you've just said that is so important, and it's really at the heart of Acumen Academy, which is our university for reimagined for social change, is that we are in a moment where so many who are focused on moral leadership want to walk the road of purity. And again, in those words like loneliness and courage, underneath that is the world of ugly truths, difficult compromise, and holding these things in tension all the time. And so, Waqas, you're early in this journey, even though Adams is your second company and your second successful company. How are you looking at these different elements in terms of a moral frame, not just a financial frame? And does it give you a sense of optimism?
Yeah, very optimistic actually about this, both because of how much more confidence I have in myself and these ideas, but also like how much we are seeing the community. Like I think of thousands of Waqas and Sidras and Jacqueline and Hamdi at all these stages, both as leaders but also as consumer. So thankfully this is all changing, and the pandemic has just been a giant billboard of everything that is kind of important, I would say. So I feel very, very good about that. Like we are already seeing in our customers who are, I mean, even you guys, like we don't, at the end of the day, our relationship with the product is very personal, and the product has to be good and the values has to be on the right path. Like I know we buy from one company where I don't align with the values, and every time I see their product, it boils my blood, and right now we don't have an alternative of that, but I have been asking our team to find that. So this is going on the right track. It just needs more communication. It just needs to be more highlighted. And what I would say is, um, I think it's already going to happen. Even it does not need Waqas. In a way, it does not need Hamdi. He's just doing what he feels right, and that's what we want. As Seth said, actually, one of my values, personal values, just be human, just be yourself, do the right thing, and do the right thing. And you never know what's the right thing. Just do the right thing in the moment. Do the right thing for the company. Do the right thing for the community, or try to do the right thing. Sometimes you will fail, and that's like where I feel sometimes hesitation come. Or you might not be able to raise a lot of money. You might have to build company slowly. But now what we are seeing is like Hamdi was looking into values way before this became kind of fashionable. I look at Patagonia a lot. They were talking about sustainability 35 years before anyone else was talking about environment and sustainability. So I see the people, the leaders who are going to lead, they are going to do, regardless of if it's fashionable, but it's only now becoming much more common and much more important in many ways too in our life, both in our values, but also in our daily use.
Thanks, Waqas. Andrew, we are asking you this next question. I think Kat wants to set the room, so I'm going to turn it to Kat and then be ready. Sorry about that.
No, such a beautiful discussion. So for everyone who's joined, this is the Moral Leadership Club official launch. So excited to have Jacqueline here of Acumen Fund, Hamdi of Chobani, Waqas of Adams, and many other companies and initiatives and great leaders and thinkers here. Jacqueline and many others will be hosting regular rooms exploring the topic of moral leadership, expanding how it is defined in our hearts and minds, and hopefully inspiring you to take action in your own lives and in your own businesses and redefine what's possible for what you're working on. And if anyone does come up to speak, just a reminder, you'll see in the title, this room's recorded for Acumen Fund to be able to use it and share this discussion in their properties. So just you acknowledge that that's being recorded if you choose to speak. And with that, Andrea, I would love to come over to you.
Hi, thank you, Kat, so much and for having me. Because Hamdi, I just want to say it. I don't want to get emotional, but you're literally like my top person that I would love to meet. Like, I admire you so much, and I am based in Honduras, and it's like your story resonates so much with what I've been trying to build for myself and trying to immigrate. And I'm still in the process of like, how do I get myself to a better standing position for myself. And I've always looked up to your story, and I just wanted to say that I have deep admiration that you would bring such compassion in a place where it's not known for putting profits over people, and just to see that you're still having that sort of like connection with the people that that are working under you. I just wanted to say that I find that completely admirable, and as a 31-year-old millennial, I can just say that it's definitely something that I aspire to be when I am in a position of leadership, to see like this could be our future if we like undo the doctrine that we should be revolving things around maximizing money, and that shouldn't be the end goal of all the things that we do. But I just want to say that I admire you from afar, and that one day hopefully I can be in a position where I can get to meet you and get to share with you in person all the stuff that I've been trying to build for myself. But I just wanted to say that thank you, Kat, for allowing me. This is kind of like a very starstruck moment, but I appreciate these conversations so much. And as someone that lives in Honduras, that is exposed to just like so much suffering that goes into people, especially like, for example, here there's a lot of U.S. businesses that have maquilas and textiles, and I've seen it firsthand at times, just like how detrimental is that sort of behavior of like, well, let's not focus on getting people to a better position, instead let's exploit cheap labor, etc. And I strive to do better for myself, so that in turn I can come back and, like you said, Hamdi, like, take care of your own people, and hopefully I'll be able to be in a position to do that. But I just wanted to say thank you for what you're doing, and that what you're doing is having a ripple effect and people like me and other people, I'm sure, as well. Thank you.
Thank you. I hope that we can meet one day. And we are a community. I know that, and we know that, and we need each other. We need to inspire each other, be there for each other, and share, especially, most importantly, share our journeys. So this way, this road is, this path is walked by many, like you and many others, and it gets better, and that's a path that majority of the people come into this field that works. And I listen what Kat said is, and I add one line into that, is we need to break some big blocks and tear them down. And the field of business is one of the most powerful impact-making, change-making platform, because we know the politics can change up and down. We know, in a field of NGO, we need to fundraise all the time, but in the field of business, we can do this in a very sustainable way. And we can see it on time, very speedy result. And people like you, Andrea, needs to come to this field of business where it was completely disconnected, people like us, for the longest time. Waqas grew up in his town, and I grew up in my own town, and you grew up in your town. We never thought we would be in this field. And I think now every person who grew up in a family, which I know a lot of people in the field of business, they have beautiful homes, beautiful family, grandmother, mother, father, good childhood. They know the values. They live and grow up in these values. When it comes to this platform of business, they think that they have to go outside of their natural being into a field where a little bit selfish, maybe quite a bit of selfish. And this is a disconnect. And I think one of the biggest things that we can do is you can be yourself, naturally yourself, authentically yourself, wherever you come from, whoever you are, and bring those values, which is the richness when it comes to business, into your work, into your business, and lead. And the way that you're leading life is not different. And being conscious of people, especially people around you. So we need more and more and more people coming into a field. Hopefully these blocks, these blocks of, obstacles can be broken down by examples. And I hope that, Chobani example does that. It truly is a human spirit was in the center, because everything else was lacking. Everything else, the money, experience, talent, chance, everything else is lacking. The only thing you can lean onto is these most valuable human characteristics. Handshake, trust, doing things right, being there for each other. Not reading what to do right, but just listening to yourself, listen to what you heard from your families. And knowing that these human characteristics, these spirits, is not disconnected from business, even in the center of capitalism. It's not, as long as it's put in the right. And like Andrea, and I'll finish it this way, you're emotional. It has to be full of emotions. And that emotion becomes power, really, really power. And then you get elevated. Once you get elevated, you really don't, the common things doesn't apply to you anymore. You can't build a factory that fast. You can't get the supply chain to work that fast. You can't get the sales to go that fast because there's no examples, there's no case studies. Those are only applies in common things. But when you are elevated for the right reasons, and I don't think money can elevate you to be in that space. You're elevated because you want to make the world a better place. You're elevated because you're angry what the common examples before you was bad. You're elevated, people are suffering in front of you. You're elevated because you want to bring some really good products to people, and that makes you the happiest person in the world. You're elevated because you respect your mom and your dad and where you come from, and the factory workers that left behind that are as valuable as people who close that factory. You're elevated for those reasons, not for profit. Profit doesn't make you elevated. But then, when you are in that space, you make wonders, So This is such a beautiful conversation, I have to tell you, Jacqueline. I'm joining your club house channel all the time.
You are such a beautiful human being, and I think people are crying throughout. In a way, you just answered what the challenge that Seth Godin put forward. Can we stop only talking about what's good for profit and talk about what's good for us, our humanity, this idea of elevation? You also remind me, Hamdi, my grandmother always said, show me who your friends are and I'll tell you, or show me who you walk with and I'll tell you who you are. And when I think about what Waqas was saying and Alexis Sohanian, the kind of investors that he's put around you, the kind of employees that you all hire, there is something about goodness begetting goodness. And for too long we saw that as naive, idealistic, and what you're talking about is deeply human. So thank you. We have about 3 minutes, and I think that you all so generously said you could stay on for a little 5-10 minutes later if anybody else can, because there's some great questions I'm sure in the waiting room. And Waqas, I want to hear more from you, but I'm going to turn it to Claire and see if Claire would ask her question.
Yeah, thanks so much, Jacqueline. So I'm Claire over on the Acumen Academy team, and it's so great to hear from you all and see you again virtually, Waqas. Hamdi mentioned that the moral leadership journey can be really lonely when you're not following the status quo of business and putting profits over people. I feel really lucky that here at Acumen Academy, we do a lot to build community for moral leaders, but I'd love to hear from some of you before I have to hop off for our after party, what some of you have done, or maybe what you wish you had done to build community and make this moral leadership journey a little less lonely.
I think I can go first. I would say like it took me like a couple of years to learn that it's fine to be vulnerable. It's fine to ask your question when you even are not sure if your question is right. Like the conversation at Andrea, just like that emotional and as Hamdi said early on, you don't have anything. All you have is just emotional. So in our case, for example, we had nothing. All we had was emotion. I remember Sidra wrote an email to Jacqueline in 2010 when we did not had an office in Lahore, and I found out Jacqueline's email address, and we cold emailed Jacqueline like, hey, can you help us with an office in Lahore? We are these guys from these villages, and we moved to Lahore, and she responded to our email after like a month or so whenever it got to her attention. But look where we are today. Like I count Jacqueline a friend, and I'm not alone in many ways because of her. So I would say like just being able to like just opening up sooner, I think helps. Being vulnerable helps. Learning that there is power in asking for help. There is power in starting this room. I think that is very very important, I would say.
Thanks, Waqas. Elizabeth, I think you have a question.
Yes, thank you so much for this wonderful room. I'm in the presence of so many people I look up to. So you both come from non-traditional backgrounds and broke it into mainstream. What skills from your unique upbringing and backgrounds do you attribute to your success? I personally don't have a background in tech, and my startup idea came from years of being a patient. I believe in what I do fervently, but because I don't look like the type to do it, I get a lot of pushback. But I do know I am in this for the right reasons. I'm in this to make a difference and to stop the suffering and many patients have gone through. But because I don't look like that type, people are always underestimating what I can do. And I know you guys also come from very non-traditional backgrounds. And so how do you attribute your non-traditional background to your success? That's something white collar or traditional backgrounds would have never given you.
I'll go quickly. I found out that my background became one of the best tools in that journey because I was away, and I was away from the judgments or anyone saying you're doing this right or wrong. So I really do believe sometimes unknown becomes one of the best things. When we study things too much and when we stay in the field too long and we see some good and bad examples, it could affect our own creativity. I think what I tried to say before is the same. And I'd say it when we do this, incubators, I have incubators that people come and just for the sharing the journey, is there is this magic not hearing everything. Even me, what I'm saying, it's basically the voice inside is extremely important. Some voices are like jewelries, like treasures, but this is a world of a lot of noise. So how do you define noise, and how do you separate noise from the real sound? I was lucky because I was up in this little town in upstate New York and away from everything. Even if I wanted someone to tell me anything, I couldn't find anyone. The sounds like acumen is very rare, has been rare. There are a few others is out there that I valued dramatically. I come back to this real support system, whoever that is. For some people are the family members. For some people are the workers, that you work together in the same space. And some of them for, board and investors, on that field. Once you have it, it's really beautiful to have, because, we will need it. We need it. We always do need it. The second thing that I found out is everything on the field of business, on the field of technology or fashion or whatever that might be, from a distance it looks little unreachable. Once you get in there, they're not big deals. Running a business is a big deal. Creating a business is not a big deal. It really is not. It's just those obstacles that, am I the right person to do it? And most of it is because of those noises. We are disconnected from this field. And I come back to the same conclusion I've always been, is there has been some big walls are built for greater people, amazing, passionate, smart, right people from the various background to come into this field. And those walls need to be broken down. And more people with the right mindset should come into this field.
Hamdi, thank you. We are over time, so Randy, I'm going to ask if you would keep your question really, really short. But you've been so patient. We want to make sure we get your voice in.
Oh, thank you so much, Kat, Waqas, Hamdi, Jacqueline, Melissa. Thank you for this room and for the opportunity to be on here. I had the opportunity last year to host Live to Lead, Kat, and that was great, and I appreciate the impact that you made through that. My question is, as a leadership developer trying to get in front of people, how do you interrupt successful leaders to get that seed in front of them about making those decisions, those moral decisions? I live in Oklahoma, and we, in Oklahoma in the U.S., and it's big in the oil and gas industry, and we have a sad joke that when the price of oil dips, it's layoff season, and so that's kind of one of the things that motivated me to jump into kind of leadership development. But success blinds people. And short-term success blinds people to the fact that they need to be looking longer term. And so how do you go about interrupting those leaders, interrupting that thought process in order to just even get the dialogue started with some of these people? Thank you so much.
Waqas, you want to take that?
I think my answer is on the power of the storytelling. I think one thing I learned a lot from like watching movies is like when there is something is happening, they put a light on just one character or one person or one object, and then you connect with that. So I would say like a lot of time when you are trying to bring an idea, like don't talk about like big numbers and big things, just tell like a very compelling like one short story. And I think there is a really power in stories, because stories stay with people for a long time before they forget the question or the facts.
Thank you for that, Waqas. I just it's definitely overwhelming listening to all of you, and for our first conversation in this room, Moral Leadership. I'm leaving feeling like I want to continue for a very long time. I want to end first by saying, Kat, thank you. You have been such a shepherd and a guide. You are so generous in the way that you join and you help guide so many of these conversations, and really appreciate your journey and your conversation and talks about loss and still doing the right thing and what it actually takes. And Waqas and Hamdi, in so many ways we didn't get to talk about this, but when we think about the new moral frameworks, I actually think that so many of our leaders of today in an interdependent world are those leaders who bring an outsider perspective, which somehow fuels a sense of empathy, a sense of what those who've been overlooked and underestimated for too long might be experiencing. You could hear it in Andrea and in her question, in her words, in her emotion. So appreciated what you said in terms of the moral imagination. You all three of you are just fused with moral imagination, this idea that you have the humility to recognize the world as it is, including the ugly, and both Hamdi and Waqas and Kat all talked about it. But you never let go of that audacity to imagine what could be, and then you go and build it. You break down walls, you hold it with grit, and you all of you represent a new definition of success. One that truly isn't focused just on how much money you have, but on the kind of human energy that you unlock in the world. And just today, you've unlocked a lot more. So I want to say thank you to all of you. I want to thank you to everyone who's been part of this conversation, for the great questions, for the listeners, for being in this with us. And we will continue week after week. Next week at the same time, I'll be joined by Kat again, as well as the inimitable Seth Godin and Benji Williams, who's also an Acumen Fellow who built an incredible organization in Pakistan and now has pivoted in his own life and is focusing on trees and regeneration. And for those of you who want to continue with the conversation, Acumen Academy is hosting an after party, if you will, on the Acumen Academy room on Clubhouse. And that's where people can share value, insights learned, and comments and questions from this conversation. But same time next week, please join us. Thank you so much, and true thanks to real heroes of mine. You embody what moral leadership truly looks like, and we need so much more of it in this world.
Thank you, Jacqueline. Thanks, Hamdi.
Thank you, Jacqueline. Thank you, Kat. Thank you,
Thanks.
Waqas.
And
Thank you,
Melissa, thanks
everyone.
for all the organizing that you did.
It was truly an honor.
Much more to come. Everyone have a great week and weekend. Talk to you soon.
Is it already the weekend? Have a great one.